What's going on, you guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I've got a great introduction Python tutorial for you. We're going to cover the and, or, and not conditions in Python and talk kind of about all the different Boolean logic stuff that you can do. So for those of you who don't know, a Boolean is essentially like programmer slang for true or false. Okay, it's basically a bit, which can equal 0 or 1. Right, so these are one of the most common variable types in Python. It essentially means you're dealing with a statement that it can only be in two states. It's thing one or thing two. So essentially, if you have two variables, and I'll just call them variable one, and we'll say the second one is equal to variable two. Okay, and you give them true or false as a starting parameter with a capital T and a capital F, and now you've defined a Boolean variable. And so essentially the only thing that can happen to those variables is they're true or they're false, they're equal to 1 or they're equal to 0. And so that's the kind of the purpose of the and statement or the or statement or the not statement, to check the states of various conditions. So we won't just deal in Booleans as the video goes on, but we will start there. So we have these two variables, and we're going to combo it with if statements to kind of show how we use them. So the first thing is we're going to check if both variables are true. So what we can do is start with if, and then say if variable 1 is true and variable 2 is true. Okay, and if both those things are true, when we run this program, we just want the text both variables are true to pop up on the screen. Okay, so right now I'm setting variable 1 equal to true and variable 2 equal to false. So we're going to run this, and when I do, I should give it a better name. Sorta list, okay. When we run this, it's printing nothing because it's not true. So what you could do is you could combine this if with an else and print one or both variables are false. Okay, so now one of these two things is going to happen because of the if else. One or both variables are false. All right, well, if our code is working, if I change variable 2 to be equal to true and I run it, now it says both variables are equal to true. So you can kind of look at this code and see it's making a decision here based on the state of those two Booleans that we set in this and operator. So if I were to remove the and, it's only checking the state of one variable. So a lot of times you need to check that something is running and something else is running. Like in the state of a video game, you might need to check what level you're on, and so you might need to see that a game over variable is false, but you also might need to see that a score is below a certain threshold or time is over a certain threshold. So comboing those with the and can be really useful. But let's say you wanted to swap that out for an or, and now you're saying, like, to move on to the next level, 5 minutes could have passed, or the score got above a certain variable. Or to turn lights on, you have two different switches, and if either of them are up, then you want to move on. So now we'll say for the or, it's only checking that one of the two conditions is true, that one of the two conditions is valid. So we'll say one of the variables are true. Actually, we're going to say one of or both, because as long as one of them is true, it's going to work, but if they're both true, it's still going to work. So the only condition where we get false here is if neither are true. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and run this, and you'll see one of or both the variables are true. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and change both of the variables in the beginning to false and see what we get. All right, so now we get neither are true, but let's change just variable 2 to true and take a look at that. Okay, so one of or both the variables are true. That's the beauty of the or statement. It only needs one of these two conditions to be met. And another thing I should have touched on a little bit earlier even, you can have ors and ands together, and you can chain them all together. So if you were going to add a variable 3 to this that is an integer, let's say 1000, you can take this first statement and say variable 1 or variable 2 and variable 3, and now we have our first non-Boolean variable. It's an integer, and we could say variable 3 has to be greater than 500. So no matter what, one of them has to be true and our other variable has to be greater than 500. So even if these are both true or one of these is true, we still need to meet the conditions of the AND statement. So it gets a little bit messy here when you start introducing a whole bunch of parameters, so you can break it down into even more layers, and you can add if statements inside of other if statements. We'll cover that in a separate video. But for this kind of condition, I'll go ahead and run it here. One or both of the variables are true, and variable 3 is over 500. Neither are true, or variable 3 is less than 500. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. One of or both the variables are true and variable 3 is over 500. So those are the conditions that are going to make this statement true. Let's bump variable 3 down to 100, and I'm going to set both of the other ones equal to true. This OR statement is clearly should be getting through because both variables are true now, but variable 3 is under 500, so we'll get neither are true or variable 3 is less than 500. So right there you can see combining the ands and the ors allows for more detailed Boolean logic combining with integer logic. So we're going to do some examples at the end of the video, but the next thing I want to talk about is a special thing that Python has for simplifying this kind of logic. And you can kind of see actually it's trying to tell me, because I'm using PyCharm as my IDE, and it does some suggestions for simplifying your code. When you have a Boolean variable like variable 1 and variable 2 here that are either true, false, saying if or, I'm going to get rid of everything. I'm going to get rid of the variable 3 for now and say one of or both the variables are true. We'll cut it down to that, and we'll cut it down to that. So you can simplify this statement just by saying if variable 1 or variable 2. So think of this in terms of a 0 and a 1. 1 being true, 0 being false. This statement, if variable 1 or variable 2, is equivalent to the statement we just deleted, which is if variable 1 equals true or variable 2 equals true. Any condition where you're checking true, false, essentially on a Boolean variable, you don't need the equals true or the equals false. You can just say if and then the variable name, and if what you're trying to check is this, if variable 1 equals false, then you can, and let's go ahead and actually test this one and say variable 1 is false, and then we'll say true otherwise. So if what you're trying to say is variable 1 equals false, and let's make that happen here. All right, you can see right now variable 1 is equal to false, but this is actually going to work even if I say, and actually let's go ahead and do this. This is checking the inverse. All right, if I put if not variable 1, that is the same as saying if equals false. So that is the function of the not statement, is it basically negates and does the inverse of whatever you said. So if not a true false statement is the same as saying if the variable is equal to false, and that's why we're getting variable is false. Now not can be used with integer and float values as well, so let's go ahead and say if not variable 3 greater than 500. Now this is a stupid way of doing it, but you would be saying if the variable is not greater than 500, print variable less than 500. And so that's actually gonna, and we'll say over 500 down here. So if you look at what we have right now, variable 3 is equal to 100, which is not greater than variable, which is not greater than 500. So this statement is actually true, because we're saying if variable 3 is less than 500, but instead of saying less than or equal to 500, we just said if not greater than 500. So you probably wouldn't use this as much for analogs as you would for Boolean values, but it does pop up now and then, and so being familiar with it can be really useful there. So let's go ahead and take a look at just one quick example that I think will highlight kind of a lot of Boolean logic here and can help you out. And there's also a list of Python beginner like practice problems, practice interview problems, or quiz problems on this channel. I recommend you check that out if you want a whole bunch of logic and reasoning with Booleans. That kind of practice can be super helpful. But so let's say, for example, you want an alarm to go off if it is a weekday and you are not on vacation. Okay, so what we're saying is if it's a Monday through Friday and you're not on vacation, you didn't take the day off, you want your alarm on. So you could do this in a kind of a complicated way, but I want to keep it simple just so you get the practice here. Essentially, you have two variables. You have weekday, which is going to be true or false. If it's Monday through Friday, it's a true. If it's Saturday, Sunday, it's false. And then you have vacation, which we're going to say is false. So what your calendar would be doing, or your watch would be doing, would be checking if day is equal to Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It would be doing something like that. But for this example, we're just going to take a look at the actual weekday and vacation statuses. So let's say it's a Tuesday, so weekday is true, and you didn't take vacation. So the vacation parameter is going to be false. Well, we're going to say if weekday and not vacation, we'll say alarm equals true. And then we'll print alarm. And so to start this, you have to initialize your parameter. I'm going to say alarm equals none, just so we don't put any default variable in when we call it. And then we're going to print the state of alarm. So essentially what we're doing here is we're checking if it's a weekday and that we're not on vacation. And if those are both true, right, those are the conditions in the example, we're going to set the alarm on. So let's go ahead and run this. All right, and we get true because we said it is a weekday and we're not on vacation. Well, now let's say it's a weekend, and let's set weekday equal to false. Okay, and we run it, we get none. Which is basically saying there's nothing in there. What we could do is say else alarm equals false. Okay, right? So if it is the weekend or we did take vacation, then we want the alarm to turn off. So we run it and we see we get false because we said it's not a weekday. Now let's say it is a weekday. True. Oh boy, I'm having trouble typing. Okay, but let's say you took a vacation. So it's a Wednesday, but you requested vacation earlier. So we run it and we get false. And essentially that's all there is to it. This is a way of using not and. Another way you could write this, just to show it's equally valid and use an or statement, would be if not weekday or vacation, right? So if not weekday or vacation, we want alarm to be equal to false. Else, alarm is equal to true. That's actually exactly equivalent to what we just had written. So I'll type those both next to each other. Just try not to get too confused here. If weekday and not vacation, alarm equals true. Else alarm equals false. So I'm going to explain just briefly why the two things we're looking at here are exactly the same in terms of what they'll output, but I wanted to show not, or, and all in this example. What we're saying here is if it is a Monday through Friday and you didn't take vacation, turn the alarm on. And in any other scenario, which is basically checking to see if it's not a weekday or you're not on vacation, turn it off. So what we did here is we just did the opposite. We started by checking if it's not a weekday or if you're on vacation. And there's no reason that you would need both of these in your programming. And there's no reason one is more correct than the other one. So that right there is a great example of how there are multiple ways to code almost every scenario and almost every problem you're going to come across. So essentially, just being familiar with the basic tools of Python and how to combine different instructions is going to lead you to writing code that works for you. And as long as it works, that's the most important part. So hopefully you found this useful. There's a wide variety of content on the channel, from introductory videos like this to game and app tutorials in using different graphical user interfaces, using Pygame, Kivy, Kinter. So check all of those out if you're curious. If you found this or anything else on the channel useful, I really appreciate a like on the video, a subscribe to the channel. It helps me out a ton. And if there's anything in particular you want to see in a future video, just let me know about in the comments below. And if you have any questions about what you saw here today, let me know about in the comments below as well. And as always, good luck with your code, and thanks for watching. Thanks. Bye.